The story begins with our main protagonist, called Suki Tachibana, who is unable to enter his school as he cannot produce his ID card. He is eventually cleared and allowed to go in as Izumi, the president of the student council, along with her entourage enter the school and grant him permission to do so. They don't know one another, which surprises Tachibana, but she goes on to tell him that she has to know. Everyone as talk about arrives at school. His friend Code agree it's him and encourages him to play the popular online game PSO2, also known as Fantasy Star Online 2. However, Tachibana decline. Since he does not enjoy playing games, he receives an invitation to the student council president meeting at the dorm the following day. Based on his grades and character, he isn't formed during the meeting that he has been appointed vice president of the school. Playing PSO2 is his first assignment, and while the school analyzes the student's social behavior from there, he is expected to compile his observations. Tachibana continues with this task and encounters a veteran player who goes by Soil in the virtual world. Saro is happy to teach Tachibana the game's tricks. That day after he turns in his report, Izumi gives him a requirement no matter how immersed he becomes, and PSO to his grades cannot slip. Everyone in the student council is happy with Tachibana's prompt response to work. Additionally, a transfer student named Suki is introduced to the students during class. After school, Tachibana takes to Suki, who is seated next to him, to the dorm and gives her a tour of the building. When he returns to his room, he attempts to advance some more, and PSO2 he meets Saro and congratulate himself on a job well done. However, he is really yelled at by Saro, who accuses him of being a failure to the ARC's division of the game world. This comment makes Tachibana unhappy, and he shares it with Koda, after which he is given an explanation of the game's rules. Izumi in the meantime reveals herself to be thorough by accusing herself of treating him harshly. He hasn't posted anything online or in person since their encounter, which alarms her. Later, Tachibana continues playing the game and defends Saro from an attack. Saro invites Tachibana to the virtual concert on PSO2 as atonement for his harshness in the council. Law Office Suzuki disputes Izumi for designating Tachibana as an ARC. However, Izumi explains that Tachibana is the ideal candidate to demonstrate to the school that a student's social life has no bearing on how well they perform academically. She named Suki as Tachibana as advisor. Following a game, Saro tells Tachibana that by hurdling up with him he's not truly enjoying PSO2. He counsels Tachibana to socialize with others in order to make new friends in school. Koda offers to organize a group game for them. He recruits other players who aren't playing to join them in a tournament, and they all participated together. At the council office, Tachibana is given the responsibility of helping Yutaka, who is unable to complete his tasks, and as a result, they collaborate. Despite appreciating Yutaka, Tachibana finds that he doesn't like being the center of attention. He invites or to play with them in another group game, and while they are playing, one player makes fun of another, and to Tachibana's surprise, Yutaka is revealed as the culprit. When he confronts him the following day, Yutaka decides not to go to school as he feels exposed to the fact that his press owner in real life is drastically different. Meanwhile, Izumi asks Tachibana to make amends with Yutaka in order to keep SO2's concept alive in the classroom. Later on, Yutaka and Tachibana reconcile, and Tachibana counsels Yutaka to keep his good nature and avoid trying to be someone he is not. Izumi then admits that she is Soros. Tachibana approaches to give his report to her, and he teases her since he already knew. Izumi asks Obama to accompany her to the annual arcade fan fiesta of PSO2, and he accepts. In class, he rejects Code invitation, which makes him sad. At the event, a large number of PSO2 players are together playing games, eating, sharing, and bonding in real life. Tachibana and Izumi register and receive the compulsory character name tag, which makes it easier for players to recognize each other in the real world. As they were discussing, Curtis sees them without their knowledge and becomes angry that Tachibana stood him up for a girl. Still angry, he decides not to go over to them and leaves. A girl then walks up to Tachibana and introduces herself excitedly. She invites other people from their group of player. Nice to meet Tachibana and Izumi. Everyone compliment each other, and they are particularly surprised that Saro is a female. Izumi is embarrassed and shy at the group, suggesting that she is dating Tachibana, which they both refuse. After leaving the table, Tachibana meets Koda and clarifies that he is not on a date with Izumi, but as the student council representative. All around the school, the rumor has spread that Tachibana and Suzuki are in a relationship, as she is weirdly attached to him and follows him everywhere. In an attempt to profile him, Tachibana tries to make everyone understand that the rumors are false, but rather than believe him, the students think he is taking advantage of the new girl. At the council office, a letter arrives informing schools to exchange equipment for use to cut down costs. This requires a meeting of secretarial executives. Izumi delegates Tachibana to attend with her, and they set out for the whole school. They meet Suzuki on the bus, and Izumi questions Tachibana about the rumors of their relationship, which he refutes. At their destination, Suzuki also gets off the bus, which piqued Izumi his interest, so they follow her to see where she will go. Walking up to Suki he tells her she should always seek her help whenever she is in need. Suzuki asked her to help her shop for clothes, and they did later in the virtual world. Suzuki shows her expertise by helping Izumi and Tachibana to defeat their enemies. Tachibana begs her to be part of their party, but he refuses and leaves. The student council is set for their annual overnight recreational trip taken in the guise of meetings. This year, they are visiting a hot spring resort, which makes Kota jealous of Tachibana, especially since he will be in the same place as Izumi at the resort. The council members are all present except Suzuki, who is busy on a mission. After checking in, the owner of the resort asks Tachibana to play a game of PSO2 late or at night, but his wife refuses as it distracts him from work. Similarly, Izumi stops Tachibana from playing PSO2 till the end of the term because at the school board meeting, while she makes a presentation about the prospects of playing video games and still studying, she is informed that Tachibana grades have dropped. He confronts Tachibana and he confesses to leaving school work to play games. This displeases Izumi as she blames herself for making him play. She gives him a pile of workbooks to solve while others are playing games. After working for long hours, Tachibana finishes his work and hangs out at the hot spring where Suzuki meets him. Meanwhile, Izumi searches the whole place for Tachibana to keep him company. To no avail. Back at school, he answers the teach your questions correctly. Even while she plays PSO2 with Tachibana, everyone including Mika and a student council board member wants Izumi his attention, but only talk about seems to be getting it, which makes her extremely jealous and angry. After the day's work, Izumi turns down because offer to hang out with her. Something strange begins to happen in connection to PSO2i. After school hours, Mika returns to her room to play PSO2. Suddenly, the enemy she tries to counter visibly fills her room. Suzuki seems to know more about PSO2 than every other player around. While this is happening and Mika room, Suzuki instinctively runs there, but the enemy has disappeared already. The next day, Mika is absent from school, which raises concerns as he is nowhere in sight as the search for her continues. Izumi and Tachibana search for her in the virtual world. There she is surrounded by a crowd of enemies. Tachibana, Izumi, and Suzuki fight their way and release her. Everyone except Suzuki seems to understand what is wrong. The next morning, Izumi and Tachibana meet Migo on their way to school, and she explains that she has been unconscious in the hospital, but something weird is amiss as Tachibana notices the same hand injury she sustained in the virtual world and real life. The next day, at school, Tachibana watches Suzuki closely, intending to find out her connection to PSO2. Meanwhile, the student council is planning an after party for the school festival, and Izumi wants the cooperation of all clubs leaders as the event means something to her. Tachibana decides to spy on Suzuka. She goes to a deserted part of school, but she catches him in the act and warns him off because they are seen together. The news begins to get around once more that they are dating at night. Suzuka engages in a phone conversation informing the person of an investigation and asks about the missing players of PSO2 in the virtual world. A player reports our missing neighbor, which worries Tachibana, but Izumi rebukes him as she believes the incident is a coincidence. After fighting off a group of enemies, Tachibana inquires to know who Suzuka is, and she admits that she is a guardian, and in time you will understand. The next morning, Tachibana resumes spying on Suzuki outside of school and gets caught again. At school, he encounters one of the enemies in real life, a giant scary-looking monster. Suzuki appears and fight it off. During the fight, Tachibana outfit changes into his PSO2 costume. To his astonishment, when the enemy has been defeated, Tachibana mandates Suzuki to tell him what everything is about. Suddenly, attack Obama and Suki both disappear into an unfamiliar place where he finally learned the truth. ARC's intelligence commander Casserole introduces himself to Tachibana and explains that PSO2 is not a virtual game but a real-life experience, controlled from this headquarters. The enemies known as Dockers or trying to possess the world, and a special kind named Dark felt the head of all Dockers needs a strong vessel to possess, which is why it is coming after Tachibana because of his powers. Hence Tasuki watched over him. Soon Tachibana becomes involved in real-world arcades activities, and they secretly fight Dockers even as they increase in their numbers. At school, Kota confronts Tachibana about his continuous absence for a few days, and Tachibana excuses himself with plans for the upcoming student festival. Suki attempts to leave school for another mission, and Tachibana follows her. She refuses, telling him to rest from all the consecutive battles. Later, Dark Faults attacks Tachibana again, and Suki rescues him afterwards. She instructs him to call her Acre like the other arcades to be in tune as everyone is geared towards the school festival. All the members of the student council work all day long to put everything in place at the office Tachibana slips by referring to Suzuka as a good the students' council office, which aroused suspicion later. That night Tachibana and Aker resume duty as guardians fighting off dockers descending to Earth, but they are soon tired from multitasking. Kasser sends a special arc men. Really them and together, they conquer all the dockers available. Meanwhile Izumi is in her dorm thinking about Tachibana and Suki. The day of the student festival has finally arrived. Soon Suki senses the presence of a darker at the student council office and runs to intervene. Izumi intercepts Tachibana on his way to the dumpster and he clarifies again that he is not in a relationship with Suki, which makes Izumi relieved. Suddenly a giant darker appears before them causing a stare as it flings Tachibana to the side. Izumi finds herself changing to her PSO2 character and she begins to fight. Tachibana gets into form, but it is too late as the darker disappears with her just as a car arrives. Photo witnesses everything from a distance and confronts Obama for the truth, which he finds hard to believe. Tachibana leaves him and goes to the other planet where Izumi is in captivity. Tachibana and Aker attempt to fight, but it is useless as dark felt has possessed her body. Suki saves him from an attack and brings him back through his pain. Surprisingly Kota appears and tries to hold them off. Tachibana wakes up at the headquarters and hands to proceed to rescue Izumi. Catherine informs him that the person he sees is no longer Izumi as the dark felt has chosen to possess her body and it will be dangerous for him to fight cancer. And Suzuki jointly beg Tachibana not to leave the mission to them. Back at school Tachibana apologizes to the student council for the absence of Izumi and promises to bring her back to them. Equally, he apologizes for Suzuka his absence at her station. He finally explains everything to Kota even though he finds it hard to believe. Tachibana comes back to the headquarters telling Castro that he is ready to rescue Izumi. Thoughtfully Kota gathers all their friends from the virtual world and they all come together to fight the dockers. Tachibana and Suki behold the final form of the Arc felt as Izumi his body disappears inside it at the student council office. While they're waiting for Tachibana to fulfill his promise and bring back Izumi, they continue to do damage control between the invited schools and students so as not to make Izumi his absence obvious. Back on the other planet Dark felt as down and in the process of regeneration while Kasser continues to direct the progress of the battle from the headquarters. He instructs Tachibana to be geared for going inside the dark felt to bring back Izumi. When everything is set, use caution not to let the darkness swallow him as he will not be able to come out inside the dark felt. He begins to remember the past as he searches for Izumi. When he finds her, Young binds her and together they make their way out. Together they all chant a spell that destroys the dark felts and brings them back from its planet. Suzuka leaves them behind since the mission is complete, which saddens them. Back in school, the after party is a success and everyone, especially Izumi, is happy and fulfilled. After Izumi his graduation, Tachibana becomes the new president and Suzuki comes back for a new mission, and this brings the enemy to an end. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on another video. Until next time, take care.